All right, we have got Alexandria Miller, Program Manager for the Missouri Scholarship and Loan Foundation. And I'm assuming you go by Alex.
Yep, perfect.
Great. Well, you're our presenter and we appreciate you being here.
Thank you so much. So I'm really excited to be here today to talk about college match fit. Match fit and affordability. My name is Alexandria Miller. I work for Missouri Scholarship and Loan Foundation as a program manager here. And my expertise comes from being on the college side for the last 10 years. I came from growing up in financial aid, starting out as a work study student, and then I joined the fund side almost 2 years ago now at the Missouri Scholarship and Loan Foundation. And so getting to really have programs that speak to all Missouri students, finding the correct match and fit for them, but also helping them gain access and really that early awareness piece that builds into it as well. So today we're going to talk a little bit about Missouri Scholarship and Loan Foundation. I'm going to tell you everything that you need to know about who we are, our mission, who we work with, and then also do an overview of our programs. And then I want to talk a little bit about college match and fit, conversational pieces that you at the after school space could be helping your students with, because I think a lot of people think financial aid should only be talked about in the senior year, or that's when people start thinking about it the most. Usually it's when that first bill comes in July before they head to college, but we really should start thinking about all the college match and fit with academic, social, and financial fits sooner. And so we'll kind of talk through what does that look like? How can you be talking to your students in high school about those conversations? But then also I want to offer up some resources and tools for you to use throughout the state. So then you don't have to be an expert in this space by any means. There's a lot of financial aid administrators who are boots on the ground that are willing to help you. It's just knowing who to reach out to and work with so we can serve all of our students. And so a little bit about the foundation. So I want to dive into our mission. So we are our statewide foundation. We're privately funded, and we have created these innovative products and services to give back to Missouri students going to post-secondary in Missouri. And so our whole mission is, in giving those funds back to Missouri and Missouri students, but we really do want to focus in on that insufficient financial resource, helping those students that are coming from low-income backgrounds, but also more than likely they're first gen and not really sure how to navigate the process of going to college. So the institutions that we work with in the state, we have 74 eligible schools on our list that the foundation works with. And those consist of Missouri 2-year, Missouri 4-year, private and public, but then also we have 16 nonprofit Missouri technical and career colleges that we work with as well. So we know it's really important not to box students into a 4-year degree. I saw that when I was on the school side, when students would be really pushed to go into a 4-year institution because that's what their family thought they needed, but they really weren't ready. And so it's really important at the foundation that we support all students going on whatever pathway makes the most sense for them. So the first program we're going to talk about today is My Missouri Scholarship Promise Program. I call it the MIMO. It's our newest program. It launched in the fall of 2021, and we're in our second cohort, which is crazy to think that we're already helping 2 cohorts at a time. But the whole goal of this program is to take high school freshmen from low-income backgrounds and put them on the pathway to prepare, plan, and save for post-secondary. And so how we do that is we built these intentionally built benchmarks that lay it out. Planning and saving and preparing really is going into this. So that lays it out every year in their high school career that they have to hit these certain benchmarks to be awarded or promised the next $2,500. So it is a $10,000 total promise to them. And as we kind of go through what the benchmarks are, you'll notice it's not making them jump through any additional hoops or creating further barriers, because again, these are low-income families. And so they can use this at any of those 74 institutions that we work with, which is great. Again, finding the right pathway that makes the most sense for them. We use My Scholarship Central as the application tool. And if you're unaware of what My Scholarship Central is, we'll talk about that here in a little bit. The application opened on 10/1 and will close for our class of 26 on April 15th. So right now we're recruiting our class of 26. We always open our new application up on 10/1 and then close it April 15th. So next year, the class of 27, as you're talking to your 8th graders possibly over the summer, gearing up for their freshman year of high school, this is a program that we could talk about and really allow your families, to just kind of be prepared. This is coming down the pipeline. Here's what you need to do. Let's, work together so we can prepare those families before the application opens, because it is first come, first serve. We only have so many seats available. For the class of 26, I have about 50 seats left as of today. We're opening up for 180 seats total. And so it's exciting to see those are filling up. But it'll be first come, first serve, or I'll close it on April 15th, whichever comes first. So eligibility requirements. So we do say that the student needs to be Pell eligible. So to determine if the student is Pell eligible, we know our freshmen in high school cannot fill out a FAFSA. So we require them to fill out an EFC simulation. So we use the Federal Student Aid Estimator. The student takes their family's 2021 taxes. They go out and run the simulation. If the number that they get at the end of that calculation for their estimated family contribution is $6,206 or less, then they would be eligible for this program. They also have to be a US citizen or a permanent resident. That just aligns perfectly with the MOST 529 requirement that we'll talk about here in a second. They do need to be a freshman in high school. I get a lot of questions about, hey, I have a sophomore that meets the requirements. Can they apply? Unfortunately, we had to kind of draw the line in the sand somewhere and start somewhere. So it's just freshmen in high school that are allowed to apply. And I talked about the MOST 529. So going back to that planning and saving piece of it, we do think it's really important that the family invest in themselves. So we do require the family, if they don't already have a 529 established, to open up a MOST 529, which is the Missouri account. And it is an investment account for their future education expenses. But they have to put in $1 into their 529. So when they open up the accounts, they put in $1, they meet the EFC requirement, they would be able to apply for the program. Now, keeping in mind that we keep the scholarship promise, the funds of the $2,500 each year, and the MOST 529, the family owns that and that's their investment. We keep them separate. So the family can leverage and use that MOST 529 however they see fit. They can even take it out of state if they would like, if the student chooses to attend an institution outside of Missouri. However, if the student does decide to go out of state, they would not be able to use those scholarship funds outside of Missouri. Say the student decides, to go through the full program and then doesn't go to college. Well, those MOST 529 funds can be transferred to another sibling or possibly the parent to go back to college. And so the family really is not out of anything. There may be some tax, tax implications that happen if they choose to withdraw the funds out of the MOST 529, but they won't be out of it, the scholarship money, because we're not actually applying that to the funds of the MOST 529. So how does the student apply? So the student goes out and they do their EFC calculation and they open up their MOST 529. Then they can access the application through My Scholarship Central. Right now, since we are looking at the spring semester, the student could apply and have everything completed except the last benchmark under the 9th grade bullet points there. So the student could apply today with their EFC calculation, their MOST 529 proof. They could also upload their transcript from the fall semester showing a GPA of 2.5 or higher. They also could have that 90% attendance record ready to go. And then all they have to do to check their 9th grade boxes is attend an event, which they get that link once they apply to the program. So when you're looking at the screen that we have here, all of the benchmarks that we've set up, I can't say it enough that we're not creating further barriers. This program really is supposed to, change the conversation in the household. Most of the time, these students don't think post-secondary is attainable or affordable for their family. But this is changing the conversation to, okay, college is an option. Now, where am I going to go? I don't think it's an option because I can't afford it. And so when you're looking at these, you'll see, once they're accepted into the program, they don't have to continue to reapply. They just need to enter the program their 9th grade year. And every year they have to hit these benchmarks to be secured the next $2,500. So my sophomores I talked about right now, we're working on our research and comparing and really understanding what are our interests to start, understanding what schools in Missouri meet those interests and, where are we, headed in the future. Now, I also understand that between 10th grade of high school and your freshman year of college, a lot can change. But as long as they're starting to think through that process and understand and, seeing like themselves in that situation of going to post-secondary and finding what is their interest at this moment, really starts to spark something within inside them. So they want to continue on and, hopefully progress through their high school career and, thinking, okay, end goal is post-secondary. So that is the MyMo program in a nutshell. Are there any questions at this time about the MyMo program? Perfect. Not seeing any, I'm going to continue on. So we have our Access Extra Scholarship. This is our unicorn scholarship. I hear it reference to that quite a bit outside of the foundation because it doesn't require any type of essay or recommendation letter. So we're looking for current seniors, class of 23, who will be graduating and going to college in the fall of 23. They do need to have an EFC of 12,000 or less. This perfectly aligns with the Access Missouri grant program that is state funded, but the only extra requirement that we have is that they must have a 3.5 cumulative or higher GPA. And so if the student meets all of the requirements on the screen, they can go ahead and apply for this. This is first come, first serve. And so it's a $2,000 scholarship renewable up to 4 years. And so application opened on February 1st. I would not wait till April 15th because more than likely all funds will be given out. We're awarding as the applications come in. So if you're working with seniors or know of a senior that may qualify, I would have them check this out and get their application in as soon as possible. It is renewable, like I said, up to 4 years. They need to maintain a 2.5 GPA or higher in college. So as long as they meet that requirement, they can continue to just do the renewal application and every year know that they have $2,000 coming to be dispersed to them at their college of choice in Missouri. Our next scholarship program is our Purdy Emerging Leaders Scholarship. This is an amazing program that is giving back to current college students that are doing some amazing things on the Missouri campuses. So they can't be, current incoming freshmen, meaning your class of 23, but we're looking for current college students. So they need to be like a rising sophomore at this point. So in the fall 23 semester, they need to be a sophomore or higher. They have to be a Missouri resident, attending full-time and meeting a satisfactory academic progress. They also need to maintain a 2.5 cumulative GPA or higher and be a U.S. citizen or permanent resident. This is a full application process, meaning that they have to have an essay, they do a recommendation, and we do put them through a 3-tier process of reviewing, and it is very competitive. So I always tell my students, start your essay soon, get everything in and get that recommendation sent to your teacher, which is actually, or your coach or whoever you're using as your recommendator through My Scholarship Central. So you don't need to ask them to write the letter. You need to fill out the application and it'll automatically send them an email through My Scholarship Central to do their part of the application. So $5,000 renewable up to 3 years, not asking a whole lot for $5,000, which, is also helping students, pay that tuition and fee portion in a Missouri school. Application did open January 1st and it closes April 15th. But again, this is not a first come, first serve basis. So it is a full application process. So as long as your application is by April 15th, you will be in the pool of reviews. And, if you meet the qualifications, then you would go on to review process number 1. If you have any questions about that, let me know. I can also share the flyer, but this is a great opportunity for your current college students. Another program that we have for your seniors that are getting to graduate or your current college students that you may be working with is our Missouri Family Education Loan Program, or MOFELP is what we refer to it. It's our 0% interest and fee-free loan. This is a gap filler. So this is helping my students with an EFC of 12,000 or less, I'm sorry, 20,000 or less. And so it kind of gets into that medium, need amounts, higher EFC that, most grants and scholarships are not hitting. So we do feel like we are helping more students by raising that EFC to 20,000. They do need to have either a 2.5 GPA from high school or college, or a 21 ACT. It's not an and situation, it is an or. So a 2.5 GPA or a 21 ACT. Again, this is a gap filler, so they have to have all of their aid eligible that's given to them. They have to accept it all. So that does include financial aid, federal loans that come from your FAFSA, subsidized and unsubsidized. So the max that they could borrow is up to 5,000, and the total aggregate loan amount that they can take out is 20,000. So, when we are talking to students and they're like, 5,000 is not very much, but then when we start thinking about loan indebtedness, we have to really consider everything that's going into it. And since the student does need to take out all aid eligible, then that means that they're also taking out their federal loans. We just think that 5,000 is a good, cap at this point, and no need or, future state of increasing at this time, but we continue to evaluate and see if we do need to increase that, just because we do know that the rise of tuition and fees or the cost of attendance are continuing to increase, and so we want to make sure that we are keeping track of what's happening in the need of the state. We do have a $5 keep in touch payments with this program. So I always say this is a great financial literacy full program because it's a paper application. They have to sign an actual promissory note in pen and send it back. But then it also has that $5 keep in touch payment. So it's not a set it and forget it like your federal loans. And there's no interest and there's no fees. So that $5 is going straight back to the principal. So as long as the student is making their $5 keep in touch payment every year, they could possibly, be eligible. They do have to reapply every year for this, and they do need to have, 2-year credit history or a co-signer from Missouri that has 2-year credit history to be eligible. It's not a hard check like our private loans, but they do have to meet the other requirements that we have set for this program to be eligible for the loan. MOHELA is our servicer for the loan on behalf of the foundation. Then we have our Director's Choice Emergency Grants. This grant program is set up to help students who are in current college classes who are having an urgent financial situation that's come up. So it's really meant to help with students that, it's not meant to pay for direct costs. It's to help put food on the table because they lost their job, or pay a medical bill, or possibly a car that broke down, so that they can continue to persist through their coursework. And so you'll see there's some examples on the screen, but of course we've seen every example at this point since the program's been open, and we did have this program open during the pandemic, and as you can imagine, we saw a huge increase of use of this program. But students that are looking at this program and thinking they may be eligible need to talk to their financial aid office at the college that they're attending. That's who holds the application. It's not through My Scholarship Central, but they have paper application that the student has to fill out, and then the school would also have to fill out. But they have to be a Missouri students. They also have to be an undergrad students. So this isn't available to students that are doing master's work, unfortunately. But as long as the program is eligible for federal or state aid and they're meeting SAP, they would be eligible for the Director's Choice Emergency Grants. There is no need component built into this. We don't have an EFC cap for this, but we do want to make sure that we're looking at all aid that could be used, especially if this does mean that, maybe it is a direct cost situation where the student needs a little help paying their tuition because they had to put food on the table and they couldn't afford their payment plan because they lost their job. Well, there is an extreme situation there and an urgent financial situation. So let's talk about that in our little explanation from the students. It's a $1,500 one-time only grant, and the student can be full-time or part-time. So we are helping students at those 74 institutions that I talked about at the first of this presentation. And then finish line. I love this program. We kind of referenced it earlier with our Lunch and Learn, helping adult learners, but this program helps students that stopped out of college because life happens and they want to get re-enrolled in school, but they can't because they have a hold on their transcripts and they can't transfer to another Missouri school, or they can't get re-enrolled because they owe that past due balance. So we help students of Missouri pay up to $3,000 to whatever school that they're looking to either re-enroll at or get that transcript to transfer to another school. So application is through My Scholarship Central, and we open up a new application every academic cycle. So right now we just have funds set aside and we say, okay, we'll award up to X amount. So it's not a limit per school. It's also not a limit, that we offer per academic year, meaning that, we're not going to offer it every year. This program has enough funding in it to continue on year after year. And so we are helping change that conversation of obtaining college degrees in the state, which is great. But if you or maybe someone that you work with falls in this situation, or you have a family that you're working with, I always use this as kind of a tool in my toolkit when I'm working with families, because I may be working with a high school student that this doesn't really qualify for. But as I'm talking to the parents, and mom's like, yeah, I wish I would have been able to finish my degree, but I owe this back balance. I'm like, well, we have a program for you as well, which is great. So I'm always making sure I have extra tools in my toolkit to help everyone in the family. And so that is our 6th program today that I wanted to talk about. Now I want to talk about something, a great resource in the States. And I know MoCan discussed this earlier. So if you missed their presentation, I would, highly suggest you go back and watch their recording. But My Scholarship Central is amazing. We're huge cheerleaders of this resource. They have, a statewide resource, of course, that is student focused. And so they have 2 sides to this tool. So there's a search tool that I'll show you here in a second, but then they also have the application tool. Most of our programs have their application through My Scholarship Central. And you can see there's over 150 scholarships. And there is also an interest-free loan, not our MOFUP loan, but another opportunity that's offered to students. So if you're working with seniors and you have not directed them to this platform, definitely get them out there so they don't miss any opportunity. You'll see right now we're very heavy in scholarship season between January and April. A lot of opportunities are open during that time. There may be some that opens last September and now are closed. So I always tell my seniors, as soon as the new application is open, usually it opens in late August, early September, get out there and start applying. And make your general application, because when you do your general application, it asks a lot of questions about yourself, and then it starts tying them to opportunities in the state that they're eligible for. So it takes out that resource, or researching piece of it that a lot of our students aren't doing, unfortunately. 21-22, it's pretty amazing that they gave out over 4,000 awards on this platform that equaled $13 million. So they're not messing around. And these resources are for Missouri students, most of the time going to Missouri schools. But I will say there are some opportunities that are for students outside of Missouri, or it allows them to take that opportunity out of state. So you really do have to just look through each opportunity and see what are the requirements, where can the funding be used. And the great thing is it's free for us to use as a scholarship provider, but also for your students to use. They're not like a national search that's selling the information of these students. When the student applies or makes their account, they're not also going to be spamming them with ads or selling their information, which is great. Because I do know when you sign up for some of these scholarship searches outside of My Scholarship Central, you get spammed quite a bit. So that is a very big plus for this platform. Here's that search tool that I was talking about. So some of the areas have larger opportunities. I'm going to use KC Scholars as my example today. So if you're from the KC region, you probably know about KC Scholars, but if you're not, if you clicked on the dark orange little area there on the map, you can see it'll pop open who is eligible in your area or who has opportunities. And it's usually the larger foundations or groups that, not the ones that just have like a $500 scholarship, but KC Scholars is one who gives a lot of money out to their students. they don't have their application through My Scholarship Central on the application tool side, but they are listed under the search tool, which is great because now it allows the students to find other opportunities outside of the application tool opportunities. So if you go out there, you can see, if you click on, the St. Louis region, most of those opportunities are on My Scholarship Central, but there are other opportunities as well. And so I know that, MOCAN is always looking to add resources. So if you know of someone who has a scholarship opportunity for students that maybe would like to use My Scholarship Central as their application tool, definitely reach out to Caitlin Venta, who would be able to walk you through that process and see if it's a good match. I'll stop there to see if there's any questions from those in the room. Perfect. Not seeing any, so I'm going to go ahead and continue on. So when we were first building this PowerPoint and kind of talking through what should we really be talking about and presenting on, we knew we wanted to bring the MSLF information to you. We think it's great information for everyone to have and just a good reminder if you've already heard about all of our programs. But as we start thinking through conversations that the after school space has and who they're working with, those students really are connected through you, and you're kind of sometimes they're game changer in their life. You could be why they're still enrolled in school and possibly looking at college as an option. I always say the After School Network is doing way more than just some may refer to it as babysitting. They are really changing the lives of Missouri students, and so. And I was thinking through, what do we do at the foundation, but also what do we do as financial aid administrators and what we wish we could do more of. And, I know everyone's plates are very full, but something that I think that is huge is starting to have these types of conversations earlier in, the high school career, possibly even earlier. I know that there's a great program that's coming out that's going to start working with those middle school students in the 220 space and also with Mason, which I'm really excited about to be a part of. But I'm hoping that as you all see kind of the conversational pieces that I have over the next couple of slides, that you can start kind of implementing some of this into maybe some of your maybe not coursework's not the right word, but your programs that you have with these students, and starting to think about what are the resources that we can connect, and maybe it's not you doing all of these presentations or workshops with those students, but who can you reach out to help you guide those students through these conversations as well. So again, I don't expect you to be an expert in this area, but I do think that high level information is really good for everyone to have as we go through this. So when we're talking about college, I love to talk about college in 3 different types of fit. And I know my colleagues would agree with me when we're looking at this. Financial, academic, and social fit are really the big 3 conversational pieces. I think a lot of people think about academic fit, of course, and most of the time the student is most worried about social fit, but a lot of people don't think about financial fit until it's time to pay that first bill. And sometimes it could be too late for that student because they didn't really think about what is the cost to go here, or what is the return on investment to go here in the end goal. So today I'm just going to run through conversational pieces on all of these topics. So first we'll start with academic. When we're looking at the academic piece, what type of school are we needing to get the credential or the degree we need for that end goal, which should be hopefully the career that the student is looking for. So are we, looking at a 4-year, which is a bachelor's? Are we looking at a 2-year, an associate's? Or maybe it's technical and career and you're getting a certificate, which there's nothing wrong with either of these pathways. Earlier when I was talking about the institutions that we work with, those 74 institutions, we just built in that 16 technical career piece, and really it came out because of that MIMO program, not boxing a student in, but it is really important that we understand, and we heard it today, technical and career is something that we need to continue with. Not everyone needs a 4-year degree. Some just need a certificate and will make great careers out of that, which is totally fine. I think some students, when I talked to them and they were coming to the 4-year institution I worked at, and I saw even with the A+ program, which is a state funded program, I'd say you have the A+ program, why don't you go to a 2-year and then transfer to a 4-year? And they would shy away from that 2-year conversation because they didn't think it looked as good as a 4-year on their application? Well, I can tell you, I was first gen. I was a Pell eligible student and I had A+, and 2-year degree is exactly what I was like, free? Okay, sign me up. I went to get my 2-year degree and then I transferred for a 4-year. Nothing wrong with that. You get all of the, same experiences, but even better because you got a 2-year experience and a 4-year experience, which is great. So then we need to start thinking about private versus public. Does that mean something to that family that you're working with? Do they care that it's a private school or a public school? Distance from home is another one that we need to think about with academic. And also I start thinking about size of campus when we're thinking about distance from home, and what is it going to take for that student to get to that school if living on campus is an option, which we'll talk about in the financial. Academic and majors offered. Not a lot of students think about this. Again, it goes back to that social fit. They're thinking about, what does the school look like socially, but they don't think about, oh, it has the major I need to get to that end goal. I have worked with students before that would come into my office the first day and they're like, yes, I have to withdraw. And, we get into a conversation and it's like, yeah, I didn't realize that they didn't have the major I was looking for. I just loved the school and the experience that I saw that I was going to get here. But then we also need to think about the types of admissions. So right now, when I'm talking to, this really is built when I'm talking to like my sophomores. Right now, a lot of schools have a rolling, regular, early decision, or possibly early action. But when we, are coming down the pipeline, a lot of these terms change. So we just need to understand what is the admission type that each school has, and what is it going to take to get there. So, if we're talking to freshmen and sophomore, that conversation looks very different right now than if I'm talking to a junior and senior. With my freshmen and sophomores, I'm talking to them about not missing an opportunity. How do we build that resume to get to where we need to be? So when it's time to apply early in my senior year to college, I'm ready to rock and roll and I'm not scrambling, to meet one of these deadlines and get everything done that I need to. Now, if we're talking to junior and seniors, they should have that resume built, already been in, kind of involved in that high school career aspect. But they should now be gearing up for what do I need to apply? Is it a resume? Is it some recommendation letters? We need to understand what those deadlines and admissions types are. So when it's the green light, we're ready to rock and roll. So then your social. So social fit, like I said, most students think about this. I think every student thinks about social fit first, but start thinking about the location. What type of location do you want? Do you care that it is rural setting? It may be your number one choice, but it's in Hannibal, Missouri. Nothing against Hannibal. It's a great little town. But if you want to be, in St. Louis or in KC in a larger city, then that's probably not the best school for your social fit. What types of clubs and organizations do they offer? Again, it's going back to that interest of the students. And so when we're talking to students now in high school, what are you doing and what are you a part of that you absolutely love that you want to continue on? Does that college or university offer that? Academic support is huge. When we're looking at what type of support are they giving students for their academic side, I love when they have some type of tutoring or mentor program on campus. I've worked at 2 institutions that had these types of programs and saw the benefit of them, where upper class were tutors or mentored to our younger classmen, which was great. They were starting to build those relationships, but it's not someone like a professor who is maybe a little scarier. It's their own classmate who's helping them work through that, and they can build a friendship and relationship and understanding through that supports. But also, what kind of career search and preparation are they offering? I love when they have some type of career office on campus or, preparation office. I've seen where some of them have, a coat closet where they can go and rent, maybe it is a suit and jacket or whatever they need, or, that skirts or pants and jacket set for the women, whatever that is for them to be successful. So is it some type of resume building classes that they have on campus or a lab that you can go to get help? Do they help you with your internships, interviews, placing internships and that job placement? I've even seen with the interview skills piece of this where they had little classrooms set up or little offices where they could zoom in and practice, but then also when it was time for the real thing, if they didn't have the technology in their campus living space, that they could go to the office and rent that space out and they could do their interview right there, and they knew that technology and that support of that person in the office was right there to help them so that they could be successful. We heard JAG talk at the Lunch and Learn, and hearing them and how they're helping their students, it's huge to support those students with interview skills. We go back to those soft skills or understanding the skills that maybe isn't built in the classroom, but just as you need them skills to be successful in the end goal and getting that career. Also, the two supports that are really big are ethnicity support and first generation support. What is really important to you, and if that institution is giving any type of support to those students, will play into that social fit. Transportation to and from campus. So I talked a little bit about how far is the school from home, but also when the students are living off campus. Most institutions have some type of freshman role where they make them live on campus, but a lot of the students don't think about once they get to their sophomore year of college, I'm going to be able to move off, and they think I'm going to be free, but they don't think about that budgeting piece of understanding of how am I going to get to class if I don't have a car, but also how am I going to afford to live off campus? When you live on campus, and this will go into our financial piece, you're just living on campus and they charge you and somehow it's getting paid. A lot of times the students don't understand how it gets paid. But once you live off campus, you need to understand how are you going to make it back to class and be successful in that way. And then mental health and personal counseling. This is huge. I think, when I left the school side, the pandemic was in full force in 2021 is when I left the school side and came to the foundation. And this was probably the biggest piece of the puzzle that we were trying to figure out on the school side of how to make our students feel like they were supported, with their mental health, because everyone was struggling, and we were trying to just keep them persisting and enrolled. But as students are looking at schools now, they really do need to understand of what type of supports. If they're getting a certain support at their current high school or in their current community, does that school have that same support? Because then when they go to school, they'll feel like, okay, this isn't as bad or as hard as leaving everything that I had and trying to find everything that I need in my new space. Because most of the time, if the student doesn't feel comfortable and find what they need to make it feel like home, they're going to have to withdraw or they're going to leave that school. And we want to try to help the students as much as possible not transfer and have to withdraw and start the process all over again. All right, I'm seeing a couple in the chat, so let me see. Perfect. I'm seeing a lot of people that did the OTC route or got an associate's. Nothing wrong with that. I even was an A+ kid and used my A+. So, all right, we'll continue on. So financial. I could talk about this all day, but I won't, beat this horse because I'm speaking to the choir here. But when we're talking about financial, it's really important that we understand just some key pieces that go into affording college. So current cost of attendance. Again, if you're talking to juniors or seniors, this is huge. You can look at the college's cost of attendance right now and get a really good idea of what it's going to cost. Most schools have an increase of, anywhere between 2 to 5% in tuition, depending on the school. But if you're talking to freshmen and sophomores in high school, I always have them start looking at costs now so that they can, maybe better understand like, okay, we can start saving, we can start planning for these things now. Sometimes if they start that process in their senior year, it's too late. So it's kind of different conversational pieces that we could be having with our students at different levels. And I know getting too deep into the weeds can be very overwhelming with financials. And so I tried to tread lightly with my younger class, my freshmen and my sophomores, but my juniors and seniors, I'm like, listen, you have to be, considering this and really understanding this. So depending on who you're working with will depend on how deep you get into this. So cost of attendance does include direct costs, which are things paid directly to the school. tuition and fees, room and board if they're living on campus, and then your indirect costs. These are costs that could be controlled. So if the student is living on campus, then their tuition and fees and room and board are all going to be paid directly to the school. But then their indirect costs, what would be built into there is a small transportation piece, also books and fees, and a personal school expense, let's say. Well, the things that can be controlled are, those personal school expenses and also those books and fees, and more than likely the transportation piece. So if, you're looking at books, do they have a bookstore on campus that I can rent from instead of, buying my brand new books? Or can I do ebooks, or can I buy used books? And most of the time you don't have to buy them directly from the bookstore on campus. You can find them cheaper. I didn't buy, and I'm sure a lot of people on the call today would agree, like if it wasn't part of my major, I was an accounting major. If it wasn't part of my major, I didn't buy that book. I rented it or found it from another classmate that had taken the class before me, or seen if it was at the library to rent. So if it wasn't part of my major, I wasn't buying that book at all, unless I absolutely had to. And living off campus, we talked about this a little bit in the last slide, but budgeting. Budgeting is huge, and understanding how to budget your money. I know there are even adults today, and I'm not even the most perfect budget person. I have a budget. My husband and I, know what that budget is, but understanding money and budgeting is huge. So one thing that we have, and I know that the Mason has talked about a program almost like the game of life, and I know Mark's in here. So Mark, if you want to jump in, feel free. But I heard that they're going to be implementing something like a game of life. We did that at the Early Awareness Committee side of things with MASFAP, which we'll talk about with resources and tools. But to see some of those students, and we did it with us seniors in high school. We did it with them going to college, and like, if you got a refund check from your financial aid, how would you spend your money? And hearing some of those students that, there was a budgeting for clothing, let's say, or even housing. We had a book that they kind of chose their housing from. And of course, we just chose pictures off the internet when we were building this. And we found some really rundown places, and then we found the Taj Mahal. But it was just hilarious to hear the conversations of these students that are seniors in high schools going off to college, who really don't have any idea. They, know that their parents are paying the bills, and they have maybe they're, have a nice home, but they're like, yeah, I am renting that place. And then they see the rent, and they're like, $1,200 a month. What? And you're like, yeah, and that's just for your rent. And then you have your other bills. And so when students would come to my office and they were talking about like moving off campus, we would always have a conversation with them to hopefully help them understand, like, hey, you need to go get a plan together, understand that budgeting piece of it, go look at some places around town and understand how much your rent's going to be, but then what's included in that living off campus. Because again, they think about getting off campus, they're free, and they're, to do whatever they want, but they're not thinking about, how am I going to pay my bills? The other piece of this is really important to understand is there are times when campus aid is different for students living on campus than if they move off campus, their aid is reduced possibly. So understanding the school's policy on offering aid is also important. So it was always just funny to hear. But then on the other side of that, I would have my students do the college side of it. So we would have our students who are getting ready to graduate and go off to the real world. They would run a budgeting experience on what their degree was, and we would give them a job pertaining to the major that they were graduating with and a paycheck. And they had to figure out how to hit all these stops and fit it into their budget in whatever job they were given. Now, of course, some students got a higher paying job than, maybe what they were really going to get their first year out of college, but it really allowed them to see, like, oh man, we're not messing around here, and this is real life. So I loved that experiment and exercise that we used to do with our students. So let's talk quickly about types of aid awarded to students. So again, very high level information, but understanding what could be available. So institutional aid, usually it's free money. A lot of times this is just a discount off the top of the sticker price. So think about when you're buying a car, and you're looking at that price tag, when you get a discount off of it, it's just coming off of it. Someone's not actually funding that money. Now, a lot of times on the institutional side, they do have endowments and types of funding, but everyone awards those a little bit different. Some use them to fund the back end of their discount. Some actually give out that money directly to students and have a full application process separate from their admissions process. So you need to better understand, what does that institution require of the student to apply? What are the deadlines, those types of things. Most of the time it's merit-based. There are some that are need-based. Merit-based meaning ACT, GPA. A lot of my families right now are still talking about test optional. I wouldn't apply test optional. ACT is still very important to us at the foundation. And so if your student is able to take an ACT test, I would have them take the test and apply with that test score, because a lot of money is being left on the table when they're going test optional. Then we have our grants, which is also free money. So there are federal grants and there's state grants. And then we have our loans, which I'm sure everyone's aware of now, but the federal student loans, subsidized and unsubsidized. And then there are some parent loan options as well. Shop around. If the student is needing to take out loans, I always advise my families, shop around for the best option that works best for them. Just because there's something that says federal parent plus loan in the name doesn't mean it's the best loan option. Compare, talk to the financial aid administrators and understand what are your options. And then there's work study. I said at the beginning of this, I was a work study student, and most of my financial aid administrator colleagues also started in this career and as a work study student. Anyone on the call today, a work study student, put it in the chat if you are. I think Sherelle was, if she's still in the room. So most of us started out as a work study student. I don't know anyone that went to school to be, a financial aid administrator, but love the work study space, and it allows the student to not only try something new. I always advise students, if you get a work study position offered to you, don't just automatically go for what your interests are. So, my example is I worked at William Woods. My equestrian students, I would say, don't just go automatically work in the barn because you love the horses. I would say go work in an office and get some work experience so you can continue to build your resume for when you apply for your first job. You'll have office work experience. And so it's a great opportunity for them to build their resume and make some money while they're working on campus. Oh, yes. All right. All 4 years Sherelle was. All right, so let's talk about resources and tools. So you've heard a lot about different partnerships, or a lot of us who overlap with each other. So I work from Missouri Scholarship and Loan Foundation, but I also am a huge component and partner in MASFAP, which is the Missouri Association of Student Financial Aid Personnel. It's a statewide organization that's built of financial aid administrators, boots on the ground, that want to help you all, the after school space, and college access providers, in this space of financial aid. We want to be the experts in the room, but we also want to help you in whatever you see fit for the population that you're serving. So I know we have the Early Awareness Committee, which I used to chair, and Sherelle Washington, Taylor Grimm, and one other's
Kristen Seaball.
Kristen, I knew last name was Seaball. Kristen Seaball from SEMO are going to be your co-chairs this year for early awareness. They put on a workshop in the fall. It's called the High School Counselor Workshop, but it really is built for anyone that wants to come, that helps students across the state, and they want to come learn about financial aid. So don't let the name scare you. It's open to everyone, college access providers, you, the After School Network, but it is a great free resource that we put on throughout the state, just for you to come and learn about financial aid 101. I'm sure you may have heard in 24-25, the FAFSA is changing quite a bit, and there's going to be a lot of updates. And so you want to be there for one of those. So they should be starting to set dates, probably in August, would be able to start sending out communications, if not a little sooner. But if you want to be a part of that list to get communication, definitely reach out to Sherelle or one of those co-chairs so you are part of that conversation. But I mentioned the game of life. MASFAP is who has that in the early awareness committee. I won't say reach out today to Sherelle about that because she just took over the committee and probably would be like, I have no idea what Alex is talking about. I haven't passed that off to them yet from years past, but we are happy to open that conversation and possibly build in some type of experiments or events with the students that you work with. We just need to kind of gather things and see what we have left over and maybe rebuild a couple things since it is about 8 years old now. But again, I loved that simulation with the students just because it allowed them to really see a live experience right there at their fingertips, and it made them go through the whole process. So if you want more information about that, feel free to reach out to myself. I won't put that on Sherelle today. And then the other partnership that I'm really excited about is MOCAN. They're bringing statewide organizations all together. So, Mark, myself, and Sherelle work together quite a bit on different, avenues just to make sure that we know what everyone is doing, so that way we're not trying to recreate the wheel, but we also know, like, hey, MASFAP's got this, how can we serve your students? Or MSLF's got a program that we can serve your students with. And so they're bringing us all to the table, which is amazing, and allowing us to see what other statewide organizations are doing. So we're not having to recreate, but we're just better serving Missouri students. All right, so that is all that I have for you today. I think I have some time left, possibly for a little bit of a Q&A if someone has any questions. I'm gonna go ahead and stop screen sharing.
So I want to ask a quick question because you had said something about the aim of life. And so you guys had that. So what happened was we had, I thought you said something to me about it. We had talked about the fact that Fredericktown, they have a fairly new Chamber of Commerce, Madison County Chamber of Commerce. And so they actually, the idea came to them from one of their members. And so they actually applied, got the chamber grant through us, and then they were going to partner with the after school program. As it continued to develop, Shannon Henson, who's the assistant superintendent at Fredericktown, said, hey, can we include all 8th graders? And so they did that. And so so they actually developed it. So it's interesting. We always talk about don't reinvent the wheel. Sounds like you guys had done it before. And so it might be a way for us to look at both and look at what you did. But they did, they brought in like, they had someone from an auto dealership, they had insurance agent, they had people from the community in there, and they had these stations where the students had to come. They had to build a budget. They had to, be able to say, oh, this is how much rent is. I mean, so it was definitely during that an interactive game of life with those 8th graders. And so it was really cool for them to see that.
Yeah, so I would love to see, because we did the same thing with our students. So when I did it at Stevens College with my seniors that were getting ready to graduate, we actually built it into like the required class that they had to take. And so it talked about budgeting and understanding, but then we did build them and give them a full packet of their life after they graduated. Here's a job, here's a paycheck. They had to pick insurance, but then we had stations set up where they had to go get their housing. That there was an auto mart where the little cars were set up in a price tag. And so I would love to see what they did with the 8th graders, because we didn't ever get an opportunity to get it to the middle school space, which was the goal. We just really used it in the high school space with, like, if you got a refund from college with your financial aid, and then college students with real life experience. So I would love to be connected with and I say Sherelle, but I have most of the material still in my office because it's been passed down a couple of times, but we started it so when MASFA was in KC, probably 8 years ago, I think was the first year that they launched it. Maybe a little longer ago, not 100% sure.
I love what you said too, Alex, about, just looking at the various scenarios about, staying on campus, moving off campus. I put in the chat about my middle daughter who went to UCM on a track scholarship. She lived on campus. She had a bunch of first-year scholarships because, she had a lot of those local first-year scholarships. One of the things I would say also is there are a lot of, there are some what are considered first year or local scholarships that may seem like first year, but they may be renewable. So always, we need to encourage our students to always check and see if that scholarship can be renewed and in that local context. Anyway, she had all these first year scholarships. So she was flying through freshman year, she had scholarship, she had some academic money. Well, then she decided she wanted to move off campus. Well, we had kind of talked about that. And I said, well, that's fine, Ash, you can move off campus, but remember, here's the budget. Here's what we know you can pay. What we can pay by being on campus. If you go off campus, you're gonna have to pick up that cost. So she decided to do it. And then she got injured and couldn't run track anymore. And she said, you know what? I'm not going to stay off campus at UCM. I can go back home. So she transferred back to C of O because she wasn't getting to run track anymore. She said, I'm going to get the same degree and I can go to College of the Ozarks and not pay tuition and live at home. And so that's what, so our kids all had these different experiences and I'm glad that they did, but she finally, and so she said, I'm not going to borrow any more money to go to college when I can go to college for a lot less.
Amen. I'm glad she had that ability to really, put that thought process into play, because a lot of students don't consider that. They just think it'll be figured out, and then it's too late sometimes, unfortunately. So, hi, Paula. I didn't even know you were on the call, and Ashley. Awesome. Well, if there's no further questions or conversation, I want to thank you all for being here today. I hope this was beneficial to hear a lot of these pieces, and just hopefully that'll allow you to better serve your students. And please feel free to reach out if you have questions or need assistance. If I'm not the person, I'll definitely be able to connect you with who can help you with whatever your need is. So thanks so much for having me today.